Josh, back on the island after a couple of years, it's always such a special place to come to. What's your first memory of the TT?
Would have been the first time I came. I was a guest of Honda, and they invited me to come to the event. And up to that point, I had no intention of ever riding it. It was just an event that crazy people did, and the idea of going over, free accommodation, nights out, was like a party weekend. Yeah, I'm up for it. And I literally arrived at the airport, got a lift out. I was sat next to Philip McCullen. I didn't have a clue who he was. It was just some guy in the car next to me, another guest of Honda. And I got to the track, and then it was a strange situation where I was walking through the paddock, and I got the smell of the fuel and the tyres and the atmosphere. And my mechanic that worked with me in BSB was there, and I saw the trucks and I saw my mechanic, and it was just like a perfectly natural environment for me to be in. And all of a sudden I felt like I'm at the racetrack, but I don't have a job to do. So that was the first sort of strange mental stimulation. And then walked up to the paddock pit area, and it was a live track, and a bike come flying through the start finish area, and it was like a trigger. I was like, I'm going to do this someday. Something about it was like, it just changed. I was like, this is something I'd like to be a part of. If someone had said, look, here's your helmet, there's a bike warmed up ready to go, I would have gone out and had a ride straight away. It wasn't, it immediately went from something I'm not interested in to, I'm going to do this. And then it was a process of finding, convincing people that was going to happen.
It's amazing. That's almost like fate, isn't it? Like a natural attraction.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. It makes sense, when you diagnose the situation. I'm a bike rider. I'm a road rider. My whole life is around motorcycles, and then you go to an event that incorporates everything that I'm passionate about. Then of course you're going to want to be involved with it. It was just that I think being from Australia, you're so distant from the event, and in earlier years it probably wasn't as promoted and covered as well as it is currently. So I didn't know a lot about the TT, and so I hadn't really had the exposure to join it.
So having seen a bike fly past down the straight from the paddock area, where did you then go to watch the racing from?
Well, again, as a guest, I sort of followed direction of Tuxworth and associated people, and we sat in a garden area on Bray Hill, and yeah, of course, that's an eye-opening experience. But at no point was I like, oh wow, this is crazy, fearful. I don't want to think about it. It was all kind of excitement, encouraging things to watch. Like a lot of people, I think, get that shock of the speed and the reality of it, and then have a respect for it, but respect I wouldn't want to do it, and I respect that you've taken your profession to that level, where I was respectful, but I want to go too. I want to join you on this event.
I don't think many people sit at Bray Hill and have that same kind of reaction that you did. I mean, that's a special kind of reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it's relative to what I've come through. Like even short circuit racing, people are like, oh, I can't believe, how do you do that? How do you lean a bike over and put it on your knee? Well, I didn't on the first day. The first day I wobbled around learning to ride a bike, and then years and years after, through a learning process, I got to the point I'm at today. But if you just walk up from an outsider's perspective and see it at its very top level, then it seems like an extreme thing to do. But if you go from the very basic beginner and move through, as I have in my career, then it doesn't seem like something that's so extreme and so far away.
Did it still feel like that when you actually got on the bike and got out onto the track?
It did, but I'd done so much preparation that I was expecting everything to be what it was. My first ever lap on a bike, properly on closed roads, for my first TT was behind a lead rider. So I felt very comfortable. I was riding the track and I had someone in front, and it all seemed really, because I knew the track, I knew the next corner that was coming, I had someone as a gauge. It just seemed like, you know, I was almost like waiting for the time to pass. It was too easy. But then the next lap, you know, the guide rider pulls into the pits and you're on your own. So all of a sudden, all of that preparation and everything like that, it just disappears. It's like as if it's like, right, there you go. And I was like, I knew where the track was, but there was certainly some confronting, you know, emotions of like, well, do I brake early? Do I brake late? You know, it's like, I know the corner, but I don't know, is it an 80 mile an hour corner? Is it a 120 mile an hour corner? I've only ever done it in a car or on a motorcycle at, you know, road going speeds. So when they give you the free rein, it's almost like intimidating because it's all up to you. It's all your choices. So you've got to really, you know, feel your way into it. So the first lap, when you're completely on your own, is quite difficult. But then immediately the second lap, it was like a sigh of relief. It was like, yeah, I know this corner, I know this speed. Yeah, I remember, you know, under the trees, through the, you know, all the corners. But all of a sudden, you've had one lap of experience to like relax your mind, because you know that it's what's coming at that speed. I mean, you always knew what was coming through visual practice, but it's learning it at speed, which is what takes the time and the practice. And I think that's still relevant right through to the guys racing now currently. The faster you go, every time you go a little bit quicker, the corner becomes different at that speed. So it's a constant learning process. Of course you know the corners, and of course you know the circuit, but the corner at 80 mile an hour becomes a different corner at 90 mile an hour. So every time you improve, you're changing the circuit that you're learning.
That's amazing. And did you have a favourite section or a favourite corner at the beginning? Do you have one now, and is it the same, or has that changed?
There's so many corners, and I've gone through so many, you know, steps of learning that things change all the time. There's the early start of the track where you sort of go towards Glen Helen. It'll seem quite bizarre, but it's, you know, it feels like you're in a little valley and you're under the trees, and almost for some strange reason feels safer. I like that bit. It's like you're in a computer game. You're kind of like in amongst the trees. And when you think safer, I'll draw an example. If you put the whole track up in the air on stilts, so it was literally a narrow road and there was a huge death drop on either side, you'd be in the middle and dead scared. You'd feel like you're on a balance beam, you know, and you'd feel. But when you're in a valley and the track's narrow in the middle, for some reason it gives you this different perception of you feel like you're in a little zone that's more comforting, and so I quite like that. But you know, the whole track, every section's got and every corner's got its own story and its own kind of memories and feeling for me.
I think you've just come up with a good idea for a new track there, actually.
Yeah, build a track up on stilts. Yeah,
that'll separate the men from the boys, wouldn't it?
Certainly would.
How have you prepared for this year then, in terms of your fitness and your riding, and has your preparation now been different to what it was when you were a newcomer?
No, I mean, I've got a fairly unique, I think, mindset on what's important about preparation, and I think for a motorcycle rider, particularly, like if I compare it to a different sport, like say a boxer, you know, they'll train to a certain day, so they'll train really intensely, day after day after day, and really put their body to a high peak of extreme, so that they're at their peak right on one particular day for that fight day, and after that it's like they have a blowout and they go back to normal life and normal routine. And for a motorcycle rider, it has to be a lifestyle, because it's a season-long event. So if you operated and tried to train at a certain level, you can't sustain it, because I've been racing for 15 years or something now. So I couldn't have possibly trained to a certain level and maintained it, because you'd just burn out. So it has to be a lifestyle. and you have to feel comfortable where you've got enough fitness and enough training, not that you're, you know, losing strength or condition, but you're not burning yourself out physically or mentally. So I feel like I've found a place where I've got a balance in life, and I've got my racing, and I've got my enjoyment, and I've got my training, and I've got my physical preparation, and I try and maintain that. So for the last few years at least, things have been quite the same. So I feel like I'm always ready for what I'm going to do.
And I suppose if you look at the more successful TT riders in recent years, it would be fair to say that physical conditioning is not necessarily paramount, but maybe mental conditioning and preparation is.
Definitely, there is a conditioning. I mean, that you would say bike fit. Probably people that don't compete or whatever would not really understand that concept. But if you find a really fit athlete in a different sport and you put them on a bike and they do a few laps, they'd often come in exhausted or, you know, showing signs of physical fatigue, and often that's because of technique and what I would call bike fitness. So someone that doesn't appear as in, you know, physical condition isn't ideal. They're riding and they're using riding technique which doesn't burn excess energy. You need to be able to ride the bike, and rather than squeezing the handlebars and burning energy that's not necessary, you can be bike fit and ride the bike in the most efficient way, and so you don't appear to be, you know, what ideally a fit and an athlete person, but you're fit and conditioned for what you do.
How about the machine you're riding this year? Obviously, you're riding the Norton. Big job on for you there in terms of development and stuff like that. It's an interesting project. How are your preparations going in terms of, you know, machinery wise?
Well, I mean, I've got faith in the guys building the bike. You know, they've got a design crew and a manufacturing, you know, area and company, and you know, I've got all the faith in them that they know what they're doing. They've built a bike from scratch, and, you know, using the best parts that they can, you know, purchase or build to create a bike.
Have you had any involvement in that? Have you kind of said to them, right, listen, we need power, we need handling, this is the kind of aspects of the bike that we need to be good?
Not at this stage. I don't want to be, you know, telling them how to build a bike. I think they've got the people in place that they need to do that things. But I hope that my experience in racing and with my experience with bikes in my career can help with their development, you know, giving good feedback and good information about how the bike's working and what they've done that works well and what they've done that needs more development. I'm hoping that my information will help for them to progress. But what they've got already, you know, I've left it up to them to decide and choose what's best for their bike. I don't feel like they need me to come and tell them. I think that would be, you know, the cart leading the horse.
In your opinion, what is the most important characteristic for a bike to have to be fast at the TT?
I think if we be really basic, like stability, a nice stable, predictable bike, and then usable power. You need lots of it, but you need it to be rideable. You know, it needs to be power that you can use in a accessible way.
Okay. And in terms of your targets for 2017, Josh, you did a 129.859 as your best lap. Are you thinking about that 130 mark, or is that feasible this year?
It's definitely feasible for sure. My last year here in 2014, with the previous model, R1 was quite a negative experience. The bike didn't handle well. It was actually quite a scary bike to ride. I had to really hold onto the bars and dig my elbows into my knees to keep it in a straight line in some of the bumpy sections. It wasn't inspiring at all. And in fact, if that had been my first season ever at the TT, I'd have probably walked away and went, that's not for me. But the year before, when I was on the Suzuki, although we had a few problems mechanically, but the actual bike, when it was working well. And in fact, I was riding it very easy and doing, I set the newcomers record for that year really easily, and people were saying to me, oh, you're going too fast, too quick, back off. And, I was taking the advice of people around me, but at any point I felt like it was coming naturally and very easy. So I think the motorcycle is very dictative of what you can achieve, and that also kind of directs me to answer the question of what are my expectations. And I think it's dangerous to create expectations or try and put a point where you want to achieve, because if you're behind it, then you're going to try and push to get to that point, and that's dangerous on a track like this, where my mindset from the first day and my first year at the track, and it is still now, is that you do the best preparation you can, you do everything you can before the race, and then during the ride you ride to the best of your ability and comfort, and then you look at what the result is at the end. You don't try and produce a result or focus on what's achievable. You do the best you can anyway, so whatever comes out at the end you have to accept. And but to give someone the more juicy facts which they're after, if you use past experience as an example, I've been inside the top 10 on my first ever race at the TT, so at a minimum I would hope to be in the top 10, and then we'll look at how far we can improve with the bike's performance, and I'm just excited to be back.
We're excited to see you back as well. Cheers, Josh. Good luck.
Thank you.